Hey guys, Mary Me. This is Anastasia Autumnfire, and today is my fourth installment for the YouTube Pagan Challenge. Um, the subject this week is the Wheel of the Year, and I'm going to put out my traditional disclaimer. This could become a lengthy video. I'm going to try really hard to stay on topic and be concise and concentrate. The Wheel of the Year is something that I can easily get sidetracked and go off on tangents and just really delve into. So I'm going to try to follow the format. I have little notes and everything all set up. So you might see me looking down. That's why I'm trying to keep myself on track. I'm going to give a kind of an overview as to why it's so important to me personally, and then go through kind of an overview of the Sabbats, and then also go into personal things that I do to honor those Sabbats. So yeah, the Wheel of the Year at its base is the 8 Sabbats that make up the turning of the seasons. They're Wiccan festivals that represent the cycles of birth, life, death, and rebirth. For me personally, knowing what phase the god and goddess are in helps to connect me to nature that much more. I find it to be something that can be very simple, but it can be as detailed or intricate as the practitioner may want it to be. The observances of the Wheel of the Year, I should say. It could be simply lighting a candle, to honor that Sabbat, or it could be a huge intricate circle ritual, and anything in between, and just really anything that you feel called to do, I think. It kind of takes on this universal meaning, but it can be so, and it, for me especially, and really I think anyone, I think the Wheel of the Year gets to be very personal for everyone, because it becomes something that we are able to share. I can't speak for anyone else, I never try to, but I know my own practice, so much of it I kind of keep behind closed doors. I keep private. It's my own personal thing. I don't want other people to judge it. I don't want other people to tell me I'm wrong. Because it's my practice. It's what I do. And it's what I feel called to do, and what I feel is right for me to do. But and I realize the irony in saying that while I'm making a YouTube video. Yes, my practice is so private, and yet I make videos on so much. But it is true. There's a lot of rituals that I do, and I hold it really close to my chest. I don't publish meditations and this and that. There's just certain things that I don't share. But when it comes to the Sabbats, when it comes to the Wheel of the Year, that's something that we all kind of do share. So much of our traditions or imagery or symbols of those Sabbats have been even taken in by other cultures and other religions and other holidays, that we don't necessarily need to be so guarded about the Sabbats. When it's Yule time, I can put up my tree and no one's going to think anything odd of me, because everyone else is really putting up a Christmas tree. I can say, have a Merry Yule, and people will think, oh, Yule, that's in a few songs. Yeah, it makes sense. They don't put 2 and 2 together to equal 4 for the most part. So in that way, I don't need to be as secretive. But also, I find, for me at least, it is something I can share with my friends and my family. I can build traditions with my little girl, and kind of carry on what my Grandma Marie and I had. And that's extremely important to me and very cool. And it also, another reason why the Wheel of the Year is so important for me in my practice, it does connect me to the ancestors. Ancestor work is hugely important to me. And the Wheel of the Year reminds me that I'm pretty darn lucky to be where I am and in the position I'm in and in the time that I am. My ancestors didn't have, a Cub and a Target and a Holiday and oodles of restaurants and fast food down the street. When food got scarce, it was an issue, whereas if my cupboard starts to look a little bare, I can run down the street for more food. But especially with the harvest festivals, I find it's good because it reminds me, wow, this is the corn and wheat festival. It wasn't as simple as just running down, the rainbow and grabbing a can of corn. It is something that took time and effort and thought and work. It's something I will never. I don't foresee me. I was going to say, the minute I say I don't ever anticipate having to deal with this, all of a sudden everything will crash around me and I'll be back to farming. But I personally, I've been born and raised in the city. I've never experienced that. I've never experienced having to store and preserve food. Otherwise, I'm not going to make it through the winter. It's not something I've had to be concerned about, but my ancestors did. The people that came before me did. And that is something that I should honor, and that is something I should take notice of. And when Lunasa comes around, it's quick to kind of put me in my place that there is a reason for this. There is something that needs to be offered in thanks for the sacrifices they made, and also for all the luxuries that I do have, if that makes sense. So that's just my kind of, just really the tip of the iceberg of the reasons why I hold the Wheel of the Year in such esteem, for lack of a better phrase. It's something that I do honor. A side note, I do have a blended path. So far, that's like the closest I've ever come to a title as far as what I quote-unquote am. I do have a patron god of Cernunnos, who is Celtic. So the Wheel of the Year, I do honor. Even if it wasn't as important to me, I would still honor it for Cernunnos, just to kind of tie in. Not that it is necessarily innately Celtic, but it does have quite a few Celtic tie-ins. Samhain is the Celtic New Year. Lunasa is named after Lu, who is a Celtic deity. There's just, it feels right. It resonates for me. But my matron goddess is Hel of the northern tradition, so I do also have, I do try to observe a lot of, if not all of, the heathen festivals as well. There are some that coincide. Midsummer is something that coincides. Yule coincides. Beltane is the same. There are a few that have different names, like Mabon for the Wheel of the Year is one thing, whereas I believe they call it Harvest Home. Oh my goodness. I am blanking on the name. Harvest Home or Home Harvest Hearth, perhaps? I am blanking now, and of course I did not put that in my notes because I'm brilliant. But you get the gist. For this video, I am going to focus on the 8 Sabbats that are traditional for the Wheel of the Year. But I did just want to put that out there that there are other pagan structures that do have festivals or observances as well that, while some might coincide, some are going to be different. So I just felt the need to put that out there. Okay, so now to the meat and potatoes of the video. We've got Yule. That is the Sabbath that comes in December. It is the winter solstice. I believe in 2016 it will be December 21st. The one we just had was December 22nd. It is the longest night of the year. It is when the goddess gives birth to the sun god, and she dies in that act. But she will be reborn, and when she is, it will give renewal to our earth. Also, if you are one who observes the Holly and Oak King, I am. Kind of a side note, Holly and Oak King, there are a few ways that you can look at it. There are some that view the Holly King as its own entity and the Oak King as its own entity. I do view them as the same god, just dual aspects of that god. So the Holly King is kind of this darker aspect. It deals with death, with cold, the winter. Then you have the Oak King, and he is the lighter aspect of the god. He deals with life, vitality, fertility, all, warm and fuzzy things. So 2 times a year they come together and they do this, they undergo this great battle to see who will have sovereign rights over the skies. For Yule, the Holly King will have been in power. He will do battle with the Oak King on Yule, and the Oak King will triumph over the Holly King. So at that time, the Holly King kind of goes and licks his wounds, and the Oak King is allowed to reside over the heavens, so to speak. And it's from this lighter aspect of the god, as I knock things down, sorry. It's because this lighter aspect of the god wins out that the sun continues to gain power. It's the waxing sun at this point. So that is Yule. For me, some special practices that I do for Yule, or that I want to do for Yule, a lot of them do fall into kind of the secular Christmas. I don't celebrate or observe the Christian Christmas, obviously, because I do identify as a pagan. But I do put up a tree. I do want to have 2 trees at some point and have a Yule tree that has certain symbols that mean things to me, more magical elements, probably some more homemade things as opposed to store-bought things. Then also have the secular Christmas tree that I can put up with my daughter and all of that fun stuff. I do bake cookies. I view that as a kitchen witch aspect, not so much a Christmas or what have you. That does tie into Yule for me. I try to make certain things. For every Sabbath, I make incense and usually a candle at least. And for Yule, I try to make gifts for other people as well. This past Yule, things really got away from me. I still have a few things that I need to send through the mail, so it's going to be like a Yule, Imbolc, and Ostera by the time it's all done. But yeah, those are some things I do. I like to make gifts. I like to really focus on the hearth and home. I do leave offerings for the good folk, for the Lord, the Lady. But otherwise, a lot of it is taking kind of secular Christmas things like wrapping gifts becomes very much a ritual for me. I have a certain way of doing it at a certain time. Christmas stockings are kind of something that goes through a certain procedure for me. Certain foods are made for Yule, things like that. For Imbolc, which is the next Sabbath, and that is actually coming up next week, this year it's falling on February 1st. I always thought it was February 2nd because I thought it was always Groundhog Day. But it is the first this year, and it's when the triple goddess is reborn after her death from Yule. As the young god becomes stronger, and with the rebirth of the goddess, the land begins to kind of thaw, and new life seems to begin to spring forth. You've got new flowers kind of budding through, buds on trees. The imagery of like a snow covered ground with little green shoots of grass and life coming up is what it's all about. In Minnesota, you don't necessarily see that. We have a lot of snow. But the idea is there. The thought of life being brought back to the earth with the rebirth of the goddess is kind of the name of the game. For me, Imbolc is the beginning of kind of spring cleaning and clearing things out and kind of revisiting the home as well as the spirit, and kind of getting rid of all that gunk that doesn't need to be there. I actually am starting a tradition this year with my daughter. I'm so excited about it. We are going to be we went in the woods this last weekend and found a big, huge birch branch. And it was just laying on the ground. It was so perfect. And we were going wood hunting to find some wood for wands, and I wanted to use birch, and there it was right in front of us. So we grabbed that, and I've made 2 wands out of it. I'm still working on the wands, getting it all nice and pretty, but I've got them carved out and everything, so we're good to go. The idea is we're going to take those wands and take them out into nature either Sunday or Monday next week, and tap them on the trees and point them at the ground and kind of wake up Mother Nature and kind of celebrate the goddess returning and kind of help her along with revitalizing the earth. I'm really excited about it. It's been so much fun planning with my little girl, and her choosing the color of the wand and what stone she wants in there, and it's a rose quartz, of course, because that's all my daughter loves. But it's things like that you can find, you can do that, perhaps other people do as well, but you can put your own spin on them or start a tradition, and I really dig those kind of things. Otherwise, planning a big feast with my witchy sister-in-arms, and it's all kind of, we've got eggs and pork and bacon, kind of a brunch type of a deal. But the foods for Imbolc are kind of seeds and grapes, sun-dried items, things like that, things that represent new life. So eggs do play a part, pork, lamb, and I'm missing, poultry. Those were the meats that I at least read about. So those are my plans for Imbolc. Like I said, it's the beginning of spring cleaning, so I do tend to start organizing and making plans, making a vinegar wash. I have a besom that I would put by the door to help signify that we're doing out with the old energy and bringing in the new. But that for me, and this might be different than other people, for me, the actual act of dismissing the old energy and bringing in the new actually happens on the next Sabbat, which is Ostara. Ostara is, it's the spring equinox, so we have day and night are perfectly equal on this day, but after this, we're going to start seeing day kind of taken over definitively. This is all about fertility. It's a day of new beginnings and new life, and celebrating getting out of the darkness and kind of getting ready for that sun and the summer and seeing the abundance that can be brought. the god and goddess are both still in their youthful forms, so we're still looking at a maiden, and the god is still a youth. But I like to look at this time as kind of the flirtation period, because the god and goddess definitely are noticing each other. They're definitely liking what they're seeing. But it's still very much a flirtation, kind of a passing each other notes like you would in the classroom type of a feel. Testing the waters, sort of. It's all about enjoying life and seeing the new life come into being. Um, Things that I do for Ostara. I have one ritual that I did last year, and I absolutely adored it. I make a smudge incense because that's what I do. And I take a candle with the smudge incense and a bell, and I go room to room and I ring the bell and light the smudge incense and smudge the room as the candle burns to light my way. And I say a farewell to the winter spirits who have helped me out in the home and the hearth and kind of stood by me in the dark months. And I wish them well on their journey, and I thank them for their aid. And as I bid them farewell, I welcome in the spirits of the light, the light of the year, spirits, entities, good folk, what have you, the ones that will kind of take residence until the dark of the year does return. So it's a literal out with the old, in with the new type of a feeling in each room. And I did that last year after everyone went to sleep, and it was so cleansing, and it was so uplifting, and it was just such a great feeling. And so I'll definitely be doing that again. I also made a breakfast for Ostara. I made a quiche with lots of cheese and ham, and then I made some then we got some hot cross buns, and I believe I made some honey butter for the good folk, and it's a lot about dairy. It's a lot about, again, you have those new life and fertility symbols. So eggs are a big deal. Again, I believe lamb is the thing. Pork, kind of the same feeling that we had in Imbolc, but a little bit more prominent. Other things that I do for Ostara, just kind of like how a lot of my activities for Yule are reflected in secular Christmas, it's the same for Ostara. A lot of the decorating of the eggs, the hiding of the eggs, the Easter bunny is a thing. Things like that. Again, I don't really go into the Christian version of Easter, but I do celebrate the secular Easter with my family. So yeah, that's Ostara. And then after Ostara is Beltane, and Beltane will always have this insanely special place in my heart. So much clicked for me with Beltane. I found my patron god came to me around Beltane. It was the first circle I'd participated in. It really just, so much started to really click in for me with that Sabbat. So it really is a personal one for me. And it is all about love. It is all about passion. It's when the god and the goddess finally join together and bless their union with consummation. And it's about that togetherness. The god gives the seed to the goddess, and the land is fertile and begins to spring forth with fruit. It's green, it's lush, it's life, and it's a very fun and festive time. It is a fire festival. I believe it is named in honor of Belos, which is a Celtic sun god. I could be wrong on that. Um, and then it also is a day when the veil is most thin between our world and the realm of the good folk or the fae. So it is a very important Sabbath for the good folk. They love to play their pranks and kind of join in the festivities, and it's something where people warn you to kind of keep a wary eye out and not go into the forest too late or fall asleep in the middle of a mushroom ring. And so there's a lot of great lore around there, but at the same time it is something to kind of take into a bag, take to heart in a degree. Beltane for me, there is a May Day festival here in the cities. I went last year with the family, and it was not so good. I think we tried to go to the parade aspect. There's a huge fair and festival, and the plan was to go to the parade and then go to the festival, but the parade, the people that went to watch it were cool, but the security people were really not very nice and not very inviting, and in hindsight understandably so. But that day it was a rough day. So we didn't stay for the festival. This year I think we're going to try again, but not go for the parade because it's just too much to try to keep a toddler reined in. But other than that, I don't know that there was really anything else we tried to do. And I know the maypole is a big thing. If you can find a place that has a maypole, that would be kind of a fun thing. I know Lily would love that. I think last year I had plans to build a fairy house with my daughter, and that did not happen. So this year I'm going to have that happen. We're going to make a fairy house. It also is a time where a lot of people like to go out into their garden and either get things going or tend to their gardens and kind of welcome the good folk to their garden and kind of invite them to that place. So that is Beltane. The next Sabbat is Litha or Midsummer, and this is the second or the other time during the year when the Oak and Holly King will do battle, and this time the Oak King will fall. It is the summer solstice, so the sun is at its highest power, so the sun god is in all of his glory, but after this, the sun is going to start kind of, the power is going to start waning. The Oak King will be wounded and kind of go into seclusion, and the Holly King will begin his reign again of the skies. Midsummer is still very much a time of love between the god and the goddess. The good folk are still reveling in the woods, and I believe this is when they have their midnight troops through. So it's something where after, darkness descends, you're not supposed to be in the woods because you don't know what you're going to see. Let's see. For Litha or Midsummer last year, it fell on Father's Day. So it was very much a family thing. And it was a time just to hang out in the sun. We went swimming. There was a barbecue. Barbecued foods are really a huge thing for Litha because you're dealing with fire again. It's a fire festival, honoring the sun. So you have food made over said fire. And we just enjoyed the sun, really. The night before, we went out for a dinner with my friend, and we were out on the patio and just drank in the sun and really enjoyed the abundance and the warmth, and reveled in it. It was about honoring the sun by giving thanks to it and really taking part in what it offered that day. So yeah. The next Sabbath is Lunasa, and Lunasa is August 1st. It is the first of the 3 harvest festivals. The goddess is now in her mother stage, and she gives birth to the first harvest of wheat and corn. The god of light, which is the Oak King, kind of begins his descent to the underworld. There are traditions, and I follow this tradition as well, where the Oak King, or the god, sacrifices himself on this day. I see that he takes his final, he makes his final sacrifice, and we begin kind of the shift into the darkness after this point, even though the sun has been kind of waning in its power. Even before then, this is really when I at least feel the shift. For Lunasa last year, I really focused on the idea of the Celtic god Lu, which Lunasa is named after. He is a solar deity, but he's also referred to as a master of all. He knows a bit about everything, and he's an expert in everything. So I took that to really focus on becoming, really focus on my spiritual path. I began 30 Days of Magic dedication, which I tracked on Facebook, and we also did have a circle the night before Lunasa because it was a blue moon, and I believe it was the night before, if not on, but it was a full moon. And so we did a moon ritual on Lunasa, which is a solar day, but still, it's that honoring of the first harvest and really taking in the first gifts of abundance, really, from the goddess. The next Sabbath is Mabon, or the autumn equinox. This year it's going to be on September 22nd. This is when night and day are again equal, but here the cold is going to win over. The darkness is going to win over after this day. Some refer to this as the second, or I'm sorry, not the second, it is the second harvest festival, sorry. Some refer to this as the witches' Thanksgiving. I am one of those people. I do honor it as a witches' Thanksgiving. It's a time for, as you bring in the second harvest, you give thanks for it. You give thanks for everything that you have received up until this point. And since darkness becomes such a thing after this, and really for me it usually is before this as well, but it becomes a much more, I don't want to say darker feeling because that just feels weird, but it becomes more prominent after Mabon, or the autumn equinox. It begins my introspection of the year, so to speak. So it definitely is a time for giving thanks. I do make or buy, if I'm running a little behind schedule, I'll go to Boston Market and get like a Thanksgiving meal of some sort. But I do that. Last year I crafted a Thanksgiving tree, which I basically, every day I took a piece of ribbon and tied it to this tree that I had. It was just a craft tree. It actually is supposed to look like a Halloween tree. And that was what I first called it, but the more I worked with it, the more I'm like, no, this is really about thanks. This is really about harvesting. It's not about honoring the dead or anything spooky. It really is about just giving gratitude, being humbled by the gifts that you've been given. So I put certain herbs in the base of the tree, and then I would take, I had certain color correspondences with ribbon, and would write down things that I was thankful for, or gifts that I felt I had received, and then tie it to the tree. So that was my big craft for Mabon. And then other than that, like I said, I made the Thanksgiving dinner and really just focused a lot of my craft time on the idea of gratefulness as opposed to anything else. Then the last Sabbat is Samhain, which is loved by everyone. Samhain is it is on. I'm just gonna flip it over so I know I'm saying what I wrote down. Samhain falls on. It's celebrated on October 31st, but there is a cross-quarter day. I believe it usually falls around November 7th. The god of light, or the Oak King, officially descends into the underworld. This opens a gateway and gives the thinning of the veil between the world of the living and the dead. It is at this point that the triple goddess moves into her crone stage. It is the third harvest of the year. For me, Samhain is all about, I shouldn't say all about, it's really heavy in ancestral work. It's a time when I really focus on my ancestor altar. I did actually, at the suggestion of one of my friends on Facebook, I did a dedication to my matron goddess Hel. 30 days of Samhain crafting. And there were some things that were really small and kind of perhaps silly, but I found every craft really struck a chord with me, and a lot of the ancestral work really just blew me away. I did leave an altar outside for spirits that passed by. I made an ancestral salt to kind of give them safe passage and protection if they chose to sit. I left apples out. I also left out offerings for the good folk. The good folk, it is believed at this point, kind of go, it's that exchange again of energies. The good folk that you usher in for Ostara or invoke are now kind of going into hibernation, and the darker energies kind of come back to stay. And darker energies, not like malicious or ill intent. It's just, you have the light of the year, you have the dark of the year. That's all I mean by that. So I also left out an altar for them and an offering for them. I also did go to the cemetery with a bag of apples and cut them into halves, so that the seeds in the middle can make the little star pentagram, and left them on various gravestones that I felt called to. And then I did leave one at the gates just to kind of symbolize honoring of all the graves within the cemetery. I did a lot for Samhain. So I don't necessarily know that I should put all of it on here, because that will take forever, and I see I am already 40 minutes in. So those are just a few things that I did for Samhain. And I do, again, just like with Easter and Christmas, I do celebrate Halloween. I know some pagans are very against Halloween because it commercializes what is truly a very sacred time for us. For me, I don't see it as mockery or making light of. I see it as, yes, perhaps sugarcoating things and and making things a bit more accessible and mainstreaming it, for lack of a better phrase. But I think everyone feels Samhain, whether you're pagan, whether you're not. Even as a kid, I remember feeling this day was different than any other. You can feel that veil thinning. It's a time for divination. It's a time for connection to the other realm. It's a time to really look at your mortality. And I don't think those themes are lost on those that celebrate Halloween. I don't. So, yeah. So that's my take there. And then that brings us back to Yule. So that's my take on the Wheel of the Year. I apologize again. I knew this was going to be a lengthy one. I didn't realize I had chatted that long. Again, anything that I said that is a personal observance or something that I personally believe, please don't take that as rote. It's just my personal thought. So yeah, that is my 4th video on the Wheel of the Year. I hope you guys liked it. I'm sorry I yammered so much. I hope you guys had a great night. Blessed be.